Welcome into another episode of Buckeye Cadence, the heartbeat of Ohio State athletics. We have got a national championship episode for you today as Jamal Luke, former Ohio State wide receiver and 2002 national champion, joins us to detail his new book, Purpose Beyond the Playbook, as well as share some stories from the 2002 national championship season and talk a little bit about the 2026 Ohio State Buckeyes and what we can expect out of the wide receiver room this year, led by Jeremiah Smith. I am your host, Blake Biscardi. We've got Grant Kincaid alongside me. So, Jamal, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you on the show with us. So let's get to know you a little bit, introduce you to the audience. So tell us a little bit about your story, why you chose Ohio State, how you got there, and let's start right there.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you, Blake. Thank you, Grant, for having me on the episode here. I think the timing's perfect, obviously, with the book coming out. I love what you guys are doing, the platform you're building. Just watching it kind of explode over the last year or so is absolutely amazing. So keep up the good work there. But a little bit about my background. Grew up in Columbus, had aspirations once I started playing football at the age of 9 to play for Ohio State. My uncle played football at Ohio State in the 70s, and he was all Big Ten. So I grew up around Ohio State football. And I think the important thing for me that I didn't realize at the time that I realize now is that I grew up having an example of belief that it was possible. Where I think a lot of kids that start playing football, maybe they don't have a person they can see, touch, feel that has kind of accomplished some of the goals that they want to accomplish. I was fortunate in that I had my uncle right there and was at his house every weekend watching his old Ohio State films. And when I mean old, I'm talking projector on the wall, old films. But I just grew up with that sense of belief. And so naturally, when I started playing, that's where I wanted to go. And so that kind of started the journey. My journey had a lot of ups and downs. It wasn't the top 5-star recruit, didn't switch the hats on ESPN on signing day, anything like that. You know, I was a late bloomer. My freshman year in high school, I was 5'1". I didn't really start growing until my junior year in high school. So I wasn't highly recruited coming out of high school. I went to Beechcroft High School here in Columbus. But just having that faith and having that determination that one day it was going to manifest is what kept me going. I ended up going to Tiffin University initially. That was the school that was offering the most scholarship money for me. It was a Division II school. They had just reached Division II NCAA status my first year of college, so I was kind of part of the inaugural recruiting class that was bringing them into Division II NCAA. And so I played there my freshman year and made the decision that would really change the trajectory of the rest of my life. After my freshman year, I decided I was going to transfer to Ohio State and walk on, and I'm sure we'll kind of dive into more of that journey here shortly. But that's kind of the background of what took me to Ohio State in a nutshell.
And Jamal, when you're playing at Tiffin University and you're looking to transfer to Ohio State, what was it about Ohio State? Not just because you grew up and your uncle playing there, beyond that, was it something about the coaching staff there? Was there a relationship tie-in, or was this really going to be a legacy decision where you say, okay, I watched my uncle play here. I want to suit up in the scarlet and gray. I want to be that hometown hero kind of person to show people that it is possible? Because your journey and what you're saying, you're late bloomer, or you're talking about, hey, I wasn't highly recruited, but it is possible. You can still play at this level, but you have to create your own opportunities. You have to be determined. You have to work hard. There are so many steps in that process that I'm sure people listening can say, like, okay, wait, that is me, or you know what, it's not too late to go ahead and start. And then you find yourself at Ohio State and then eventually getting to become a national champion. So what was that like for you?
Well, one of the things that my late father instilled in me, who very instrumental, one of my heroes growing up, my dad. But one of the things he instilled in me early, just really in doing yard work, was if you're going to do something, do it right. And so for me, my mentality was when I was playing football and I was at Tiffin and we were playing in front of small crowds and we were busting our butts, getting up at 6 a.m., doing all the gritty stuff that you would do at any collegiate football program. For me, it was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to put in all this work, I want to do it at the maximum level. I want to do it at the highest level. I don't want to ever look back and think, what if I would have tried? And so I knew I was good enough to do it. And I knew that I didn't want to have any regrets after I was done playing football. So those factors is what made the decision easy for me to, after the season, my freshman year at Tiffin, to decide before I came home for Christmas break that I was going to take that leap of faith and transfer to Ohio State. There really wasn't any personal relationships there with coaches or anything like that. I reached out to the coaches on my own and let them know that I wanted to transfer and walk on. The recruiting coordinator at the time, Coach Bill Conley, who I'm forever grateful for, he was the person that I reached out to, and he and along his assistant, John Hill, who handled recruiting as well. Those two coaches were very, very instrumental in ultimately giving me an opportunity to walk on there at Ohio State. But outside of that, I didn't have any relationships going in. It was just more about, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it at the maximum level. And that's really a life principle for anybody, whatever you're doing. If you're going to do something, do it at the highest level and you're going to reap maximum rewards.
There's so much wisdom in that, Jamal. And you look at your journey, and let's talk about it through the lens of your book, Purpose Beyond the Playbook. And Coach Tressel was able to write the foreword for this book, so I'm sure that was a high honor for you. This is what the cover looks like, everyone, and we'll give you more information about where you can find this book and how you can purchase it later on in the episode. But let's now go through your story in terms of this book because it details it. Why did you decide to write a book?
That's a great question, Blake. And honestly, it was something you asked me that 5-10 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. Never in my wildest dreams thought I would be an author, but really just life's roller coaster is what took me there. I went through a couple of divorces, and after my second divorce 5 years ago, I was kind of like at rock bottom emotionally. Had been through some other things in life, but that was like a point in my life where I was just emotionally at the lowest level I had been. And so I started journaling, and just journaling was kind of a healthy outlet for me. And as I was journaling, I realized that I had so much inside of me that I felt like I needed to get out and that I felt would be helpful to people. And so I was like, okay, well, let's start writing a book. And I started breaking it up into chapters, but then I felt like I was all over the place. And so I hit kind of a writer's block for about 4 or 5 years until the end of last year, the end of 2025. I just got a fire lit under me just through some conversations with some close friends. And it was like, you know what? All the reasons, all the excuses, I should say, that I was coming up with in my head as to why I shouldn't finish the book. You know, we a lot of times will self-sabotage things that ultimately can be our greatest impact on the world. We talk ourselves out of it. And so that's what I had been doing for the last 4 years. But through those conversations, it was like, no, you know what? Let's go ahead and get this done. And whatever happens, happens. But at least you can say you finished it. And so that motivated me to get it done at the end of last year. And then we finally hit the shelves about 3 weeks ago now, and it's been a very, very rewarding process, but also to see the feedback and the impact that it's already had on people's lives all over the country has been a tremendous honor. Truly grateful for it.
And when you look at that title, it's Purpose Beyond the Playbook. And so if the athletes are listening here, you're like, okay, we have a playbook, whether it's offense or defense, or if you're working a job, you have a playbook to how you're supposed to live your life, or a job description of what you're supposed to do to operate every single day. But your title is Purpose Beyond that. So how did you arrive at that title right there?
Well, when you think about a playbook, Blake, you think about, okay, a playbook is if everything goes right, this is how this play should work. And so we have these playbooks, obviously in athletics, but then we subconsciously, we do that with our own lives as well. If everything goes right, I should be able to pay this bill by this date. If everything goes right, I should be able to take this trip. If everything goes right, this relationship should end in a happily ever after marriage. Well, what happens when everything doesn't go right? Right? We see that all the time in athletics. A blitzer comes off the edge that we didn't account for, disrupts the whole play. Okay, what do we do? How do we react? How do we respond? Well, that happens in our life as well. We go through job losses, we go through divorce, we go through financial ups and downs. Well, when everything doesn't go according to plan, who are you? And so this book is written for those folks that are experiencing everything not going according to plan. And this is just a reminder and encouragement for those people that when everything doesn't go according to plan and beyond the playbook, you still have purpose. There's still a reason that you're here. There's still work for you to do. Your identity is not tied into what was supposed to go according to plan. Your identity is tied into the core of who you are. And when you realize and you understand the core of who you are, now you can take that next step forward. And when you take that next step forward and you keep going, that's when you have positive effects on the world around you, which is ultimately what we're all put here to do.
So Jamal, Grant here. First off, it's great to meet you. I really, I really admire, like you said, 45 years. See, that is not with the playbook. That is, that's the blitzer off the edge right there.
That is the blitzer off the edge. That was not according to plan.
Going 4 to 5 years and having that break in between, I think, there's a very important lesson in that. I just give credit where credit is due to finishing that and kind of reaping the benefits. But I want to ask you, who exactly are the people that this book is written for?
Good question, Grant. This book is written for anybody that feels like they're in a transition in their life right now. So you feel like there's another level that you should be playing at, another level that you should be living and flowing at, but you don't know how to get there, or you recently have gone through job loss, you recently have gone through divorce, you recently have gone through that unforeseen play that came upon your life. And it's also written for people that feel like they're doing okay right now. They feel like they're in a safe space and everything is rolling and going according to plan. It's written for you as well, because one thing's for sure, that adversity is going to come at some point. That's the guarantee of life. As long as you keep living, there's going to be at some point some type of adversity. And this book is going to prepare you on the front end for how to handle that adversity so that you can keep going and make the impact that you're supposed to make. So, short answer made long, Grant, I would say this book is literally written for every person, no matter where you find yourself at this point in time in your life. This book is written as a guide, as an encouragement to know that there's a victory at another level that's waiting for you as long as you keep going.
I love that. Okay. And then I want to ask, what is the difference between performance-based identity and purpose-based living?
Yeah, I love that. Performance-based identity is, we find, and it's very common as humans, we find our gratification in our title and what we do. And, for so long for me, it was being an athlete. It was being a football player at Ohio State. That's who I was. And when that ended, and a lot of times for athletes, when it's over, we have that identity crisis of who are we? And that's because we've tied so much of our identity into our performance, into our role. We see it every day in the workplace. You may be a CEO or a manager in a company. Well, when the job layoff comes, who are you then? And so that's where the purpose-based living comes to play, is that no matter what you're currently doing in this season of your life, no matter what you used to do or who you used to be, your purpose and your fulfillment comes in the core of who you are as a person. And when you live from the inside out, now your happiness isn't dictated on the situations and circumstances of life. Your fulfillment and your happiness comes from knowing who you are and what you're called to do on this earth.
And Jamal, that goes right along with your story too. If you lived from the outside in when all that adversity was around you, or maybe the odds were stacked against you, you're sitting here at 5'1" as a freshman, like, how am I ever going to play football looking around? Like, I'm never going to be a wide receiver. And that's something that's out of your control. Like, you have this dream inside of you and you keep going and you hit the growth spurt and you do become that. But then you hit adversity along the way. You want to transfer schools. And then you're talking about the different life situations that have happened. But you have lived knowing who you are and how important that is to live with purpose instead of to allow life to just happen and everything's always happening to me. And you have that attitude where it's almost like victor versus victim.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was one of my favorite parts going through the book, is seeing the difference between those two when it's performance-based identity and, okay, what is my title? What are my roles right now? How do people know me publicly? But there's so much more to that public version. There is a private version, and that has to be right first before that can go live on the outside. Your inside has to be right before the outside can be. But
absolutely.
Also in the book, the foreword's by Coach Tressel, and he was your coach at Ohio State. He's been a great mentor to, I'm sure, you and many different players.
Yeah.
Every story you hear about Coach Tressel is he is an absolute gentleman and a father figure to so many. And having a chance to spend time around him, he is as advertised, just to what you as players would all share about him. But why did you choose him to write the foreword to your book right now?
Honestly, there was no better person that I could have asked to write the foreword to my first book. Coach Tressel was the first person, and I tell people this all the time, he was the first coach I ever encountered, and I played football starting at the age of 9. First coach I ever encountered that actually coached from the inside out. He spent as much time on building the character of who we were as men as he did on the X's and O's. And Coach Tress understood that if he built national championship character men, that the byproduct would be our performance on the field, which is why we were fortunate and able to win the national championship in 2002. And so those principles that he taught us, they've stayed with me, and there's stuff that I implement on a daily basis in my life. So he's forever had an impact on my life in a positive way. Anytime I need him for anything, he's there. He's there for all of his players. And he's I would say probably one of the most influential men in my life. And so there was no other person that I wanted to write the foreword for my book. It was just a matter of, would he have time? And he always makes time for his guys. And so when he said yes right away, I was truly grateful. And it's a legacy project. This is something that the book in and of itself, it coming to fruition, means a lot, but to be able to have so many important people in my life be a part of it, from Coach Tress doing the foreword for me, to my daughter doing the photo, the cover photo, just being able to incorporate so many special people in my life in this project is something that it's truly, truly humbling.
Well, I think I can speak for both Blake and I. When, growing up with Ohio State football, Tressel was larger than life. He, and everything you said was definitely palpable as a fan. So I definitely understand why you made that decision. But I want to ask, what was the most important lesson that you learned from him? Maybe a tough question, but just culminating from everything you experienced with him.
I'd say probably the most important thing that Coach Tress taught us is remember who you are. And in that season of life, obviously, we were Ohio State Buckeyes. And so what it meant there at that time was, even when you leave this facility, remember who you are, who you're representing. There's an expectation, a responsibility you have as an Ohio State Buckeye. What it means in this season of life is purpose beyond the playbook. No matter what happens on the outside with life's perceived ups and downs, successes, failures, remember who you are. And who you are is an overcomer. You are a champion. Everything is actually happening for you, for your highest growth. And so remember those core things of who you are, no matter what's taking place on the outside. So I would say that statement, that phrase, is probably one of the core tenets of Coach Tressel's teachings that stick with me on a regular basis.
And Jamal, you're talking about Coach Tressel saying that he wanted to develop national championship character, knowing what that ultimate goal was. He was coaching from the inside out. And even in those meetings that you guys would start with gratitude to make sure that there was always a heart posture toward what was really important. And you're talking about Coach Tressel teaching you, remember who you are. And all of that plays into doing just that and remembering who you are and the university that you're playing for and the brotherhood and the purpose that you're there in uniform. But when we talk about building national championship character and what it takes to win a national championship, just how difficult that is, and then having a guy like Coach Tressel leading the program, because sometimes when you're a coach, that title is more than coach. Sometimes it's dad, sometimes it's mentor, sometimes it's friend. It can take on so many different roles. So when Coach Tressel's leading you and what you've learned in winning a national championship, how do you form championship habits? For the viewer listening, what can they do practically to apply to their lives? You're saying, okay, we won a national championship because Coach Tressel coached like this. What I've learned in my life has gotten me here. How can the viewer or the listener go ahead and start forming championship level habits?
Number one, it starts with identifying what you truly want for your life. I think a lot of people make the mistake of living a life that looks good to other people, looks good on the outside, but maybe isn't necessarily what they actually desire for themselves, because maybe it doesn't fit in the box of what other people think they should be doing. So I think that's number one, identifying what you truly want for your life. Number two, understanding why do you want that thing? Because as I mentioned earlier, one of the facts of life is that adversity is going to come at some point. And if you don't understand the why behind the what, that's when it's really easy to fold up shop and quit. So got to marry that why with the what. And then I think the third thing that's vital is that make sure that you're taking action towards 1 and 2. Right? So we can't take consistent action if we don't understand what we want. We can't take consistent action if we don't know why we want that thing. But when we know what we want and why we want it, now we can start to develop habits on a daily basis that's going to get us closer to that goal. Right? If I want $1 million in my bank account, well, I know I want, that's my what. Now I got to figure out why do I want that. And it's got to be bigger than, rims on the car. It's got to be something. I heard a mentor once tell me your why has got to be big enough to make you cry, something that tears at the heartstrings. Mm-hmm. But then now that I know my what and my why, that for that $1 million, now I can start to take action every day. Well, what I'm not going to do is go, waste money buying frivolous things. That's not going to get me closer to the $1 million. But maybe I take a piece of my check every day and I'm investing it in different places to multiply it. But now I can take the daily habits, the consistent action that's going to get me closer to that $1 million. So it starts with the what and the why, and that's what allows you now to identify the necessary habits that you can start to do on a daily basis to get there.
So Jamal, I want to ask, why is developing transferable skills so important?
And when you say transferable, Grant, you mean in terms of different areas of life?
Yes, yeah, transient, yeah.
It's important because one thing I know is that once you've been successful in one area of life, you can now use that as a point of reference for any area of your life. So for me, had I never left Tiffin and transferred to Ohio State, and this is before the transfer portal, so there was no portal. This was old school. Had to sit out a year, and all kind of things. So had I never done that, that's a huge point of reference that I would never be able to draw from in terms of knowing that I can accomplish anything at the highest level. Because I took that step of faith in that area of my life at that time, anytime there's been a mountain, so to speak, in my life since then, I can always draw back on that. Like if I've done it once, I can do it again. And so that's why it's important to develop skills. And I think the biggest skill to develop is persistence. Persistence will beat talent any day of the week. Now, if you have both, that's the perfect marriage. But if you had to develop one skill, I would say it's persistence, because if you don't quit, at some point, the mountain's got to fall. If I keep hitting it, at some point, it's got to crack. And so that is the number one skill I tell everybody to develop. But once you've seen that persistence pay off, that can transfer to any area of life and it'll lead to success.
And you're talking about persistence, Jamal, and that is a transferable skill that I'm sure you learned from football coming into real life, especially chasing a national championship in that season. So let's unpack that 2002 season. Yeah. What was the moment, or if there was one, that you realized inside that locker room, okay, this team is special and we have a chance to go ahead and win a national title, let alone be 14-0?
I think it was after the Holy Buckeye moment, the game at Purdue. We were rolling pretty good that year. We had a couple close calls prior to that, but after we pulled that one off at Purdue in the fashion that we did it, that's when it really started to sink in that, okay, we can actually do the whole deal this year. And we were a close-knit, to this day, we're still a close-knit team. And all of that started back in spring ball that year, coming off of the loss we had in the Outback Bowl in January of that year to South Carolina. We lost in the last second field goal. But those winter workouts and that spring, the character that was being developed within the team from Coach Tress carried through the summer. And so we were truly a family. That word gets tossed around a lot in athletics, but one thing I can say without a shadow of a doubt is that our team that year, the 02 team and really the 03 team, we were truly a family. And that was one of the big things that Coach Tress cultivated, was being more than teammates, but actually being brothers, because you'll always play harder for your brother than you will just a teammate. And so that was developed long before the season started. And as we got over the hump against Purdue, that's when it really started to sink in that we can go ahead and win the whole thing.
Yeah, I hear themes of the brotherhood. I hear themes of Woody Hayes' "You Win with People." You can just see how people and family are so embedded throughout all of Ohio State lore and the history and the tradition all throughout the program. So, Jamal, looking through that season, as close as you guys were, what's a story from that 2002 season that maybe most people in the public don't know?
There's several, but the number one thing that comes to mind is the bet that we made with Coach Tressel. In particular, it was Richard McNutt that made this bet. So the bet was that if we win the national championship, that Coach Tressel had to get cornrows in his hair, get his hair braided. So Richard's girlfriend at the time was on the track team. She actually braided my hair as well. Back when I had hair, I had braids my last year and a half at Ohio State. But but that was the bet. So obviously we go on and we win the national championship. So the first day of 6 a.m. workouts, in comes Coach Tress with cornrows in his hair, had his hair braided, had the stocking cap on.
I can't even picture that. Honest to God.
Oh, there's gotta be photos
Yeah, I
somewhere.
was gonna
I mean,
say,
Check that down.
yeah, but that's the story I will never forget. He held up his end of the bet. He came in and he had him in, I think he had him in for the day, and I think he got him taken out. But yeah, he showed up to 6 a.m. workouts with his hair braided and the stocking cap to boot. So yeah, good time.
wow. Yeah, I mean that's surreal to hear. And like you said, if a photo ever gets leaked, I can't wait for that.
Right.
Um, I guess one huge memory obviously is the national championship game itself, which you could write a book about that game. There's just so many moments.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I don't need to tell you, but Miami was, the biggest favorite you could have that season,
Yeah.
And for the game to unfold like it did, I guess just take us through you know the emotions and of that game and what it was like to be on the sidelines and witness some of those moments and yeah, I mean, just in general about that game and how by the end of it, that had to feel like such a release for you by the end of that game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unlike any other game I've experienced, obviously with it being a national championship, but it started with even us just coming out of the tunnel for pregame warmups, and it felt like the whole horseshoe had traveled there. And we probably had them outnumbered 75% to 25% with our fans. And so it felt like another home game. So that was like the first thing that was just absolutely unbelievable. And then when we were going back and forth, kind of trading blows with them, I'll say once we got into overtime and we had the big fourth down, and I think it was like 4th and 15 or whatever, and we got that conversion and big catch by Michael Jenkins on the sideline, the comeback route. That was once we got that. That's when we knew as a team, like, okay, we can win this game, and it's right there in eyesight. Like we felt like we could reach out and touch it at that point. We started off a little slow, and then we picked it up and we took the lead, and that kind of gave us some faith. But then they started to make their run, and there was some doubt that started to creep in. But once we got that big fourth down conversion, that was when we could actually taste it, and there was really no stopping us at that point because of all of our experience. Again, going back to what I said earlier, once you achieve something and you can draw on that experience and apply it to future situations. Well, we had been in close games all year that year. And so we knew once we got that fourth down conversion, like, okay, yeah, this is our game. We've been here before. They didn't have that experience. And so that was our advantage really going down the stretch. And so once we were able to get that conversion, we could taste it. And then once we got the pass interference call, which was pass interference,
Yeah,
it was
of
just
course.
delayed.
Yeah.
But once we got that, we knew that this was our game. And when the final buzzer went off and we were national champions, that feeling in that moment, there's not too many. I've never experienced anything else like that in life. I don't know if there is other things that kind of rival that moment, but that moment when it was all zeros and we were champions, all of the hard work, all of the perseverance, for me personally, my own personal journey of how I got to Ohio State, how it was delayed and had to wait, and there were no guarantees, and training on faith for 6 months before I even had an opportunity to to try out for the team. You know, all of those things came up for me and just overwhelmed me with emotion. So as a team, it was absolutely indescribable. But then personally, because of how I got to that point, it was just unlike anything I've ever felt in my life before.
And when we're looking at these lessons from that 2002 season, Jamal, how do they go ahead and connect to the book and the greater scheme in life? You're going from that game to now in this book and what you've learned in that time between that you now get to share with the rest of the world through this book.
Well, the personal journey of how I got to Ohio State is what really I detail in the book in terms of the lessons that I took away from that season of life that's applicable to, I believe, everybody. Again, number one, I'd say persistence. But number two, the biggest lesson that comes from that journey is the pursuit is where the success is. Like, success isn't a destination. It's really the journey of us becoming national champions. That was the success, because what was developed in us along the way is stuff that'll pay dividend in our life forever. And that was just a moment when we won it. But again, it's what was developed that'll last for eternity. And so the same thing, wherever you find yourself at this point in time in your life, it's the pursuit, it's the success. The journey, I should say, is the successful part, because what's being developed in you is something that's going to make the bigger impact. See, I had no idea, like, me transferring to Ohio State, I didn't know I was going to win a national championship. I just was pursuing my dream and my goal. Well, in winning the national championship, it's absolutely changed my life. You know, if I don't win a national championship, there is no purpose beyond the playbook. If I don't win a national champion, there are national championship. There are no national worldwide speaking engagements. If I don't win a national championship, there are no larger scale opportunities to impact people's lives in a positive way. But all of that came because I chose to get in the game and pursue my dream. And so that's the biggest takeaway for anybody that's watching, is get in the game of life and pursue your dreams, pursue your goals, because in the pursuit is where you're going to make the impact that's going to leave a ripple effect on the world. So get in the game and go after your dreams.
Yeah, the journey of it is the reward at
yeah.
times. And even before we transition to this 2026 Ohio State Buckeyes, just really quick to talk about that. I think, well, actually, I'll pose this to the room here. Do we think that Coach Tressel's first official act as lieutenant governor was to classify that picture of him with cornrows? I mean,
yeah, no kidding.
But
Yeah.
But Jamal, we had an opportunity on Student Appreciation Day to take in some of practice together, and we were sitting there talking, and we were going back and forth on the wide receivers a little bit. And I had asked your opinion on a few guys, so now we can share that conversation publicly. But when you look at this wide receiver room for Ohio State this year, with Jeremiah Smith back for year 3, Kyle Parker, Devin McEwen, first time seeing transfer receivers in this room at Ohio State in the transfer portal era. And then you have a guy like Brandon Inniss, who's been reliable, and he's now back again too as a leader. What do you see in that wide receiver room from those guys, the elder statesmen of the room that have to now lead on this offense?
Immense talent. And it's amazing that we're able to reload the way we are every year. And it's been that way for decades. It's nothing new. But it just feels like the talent gets deeper and deeper year by year. And obviously, Jeremiah Smith, probably the best college football player in the nation, goes without saying. But it's impressive. He's going to open up the door for so many guys playing alongside of him. I expect Brandon Inniss to take a big leap this year. I know he had some positive catches, some good stuff in the return. But I think his role is going to expand this year. I fully expect him to take a leap. Devin McEwen was extremely impressive in the spring as well. Kyle Parker looked great. I think, and then the young guys with Chris Henry Jr. and Brock. I mean, those guys came on so fast. Like, there's really no way that anybody's going to be able to guard them from top, whether they choose to go 4 deep or 6 deep with their rotation. There's nobody that can be covered one-on-one with that group, which is only going to open up the door for Bo Jackson and those guys in the backfield to do their thing. And then you look at Legend Bay, who's probably going to play a little bit of running back and receiver. I mean, the offense is scary.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned, so much young talent in Ohio State, being able to reload with that talent. What does it take for a young wide receiver to really step up in Columbus?
Number one, you got to be confident, because you're walking into a room full of absolute dogs from top to bottom in that wide receiver room. And I literally mean top to bottom, from the 4-star, 5-star guys to the guys you've never heard of. Everybody in that room, and it's always been that way, everybody in that room could go start anywhere else in the country pretty much. So you've got to be confident in what you bring to the table. Secondly, you got to be coachable. You got to know the playbook. So when you get out there, you got to know what you're doing so the coaches can trust you. And then thirdly, you just got to make plays. Like, whenever your opportunity is called, you have to take full advantage of it consistently to get on the field. Otherwise, it's going to be tough sledding, because the talent is just so deep in that room.
And Jamal, we'll close with this question right here as a little bit of an advice session here. So you're going to get to mentor the rest of the room for a minute. What advice do you have to the athletes who are going to have to navigate life beyond their playing days, or to the person that may be stepping into retirement, or a young person stepping out of college and now into the real world? That playbook of school that they have known now is going to change. What advice do you have for those people groups?
I would say, number one, get clear on who you are, understand who you are, know what you want, and know why you want it. Your opportunities in life are going to be solely predicated on you understanding those 3 things. And then what that does is it allows you now to leverage your past to springboard to the future. See, a lot of times people will stay or try to relive their past, when the most powerful thing you can do is actually leverage your past to create a bigger platform in the future. And that's whatever you've done, whether it's you are an athlete at Ohio State. How can I leverage that platform of being an athlete at Ohio State in my former life to now make my future life that much greater? Whether you're just, like you mentioned, a recent college graduate, how do I leverage getting my degree from the Ohio State University to now create a bigger platform out in the marketplace because I'm an Ohio State graduate? Whether you were a 4.0 student, you could go down the line. Whatever you used to be or whatever you used to do, there's something in your life that you did or that you accomplished that not everybody else accomplished or not everybody else did. So how do you leverage that to springboard your future? And it starts with remembering who you are, knowing what you want and why you want it.
It's really powerful stuff and great wisdom, Jamal. Thank you so much. So again, to all the listeners, Jamal, where can they find your book? How can everyone get their hands on Purpose Beyond the Playbook? Whether it's for themselves, they need to buy it as a gift. We need to get the word out for this book so everybody can understand what Purpose Beyond the Playbook really is. And so families, teams, organizations can all be impacted by your work.
Absolutely, Blake. So you can go to Amazon, search up Purpose Beyond the Playbook. It'll come right up. You can also go to my website, purposebeyondtheplaybook.com, and you can order it through the website. You can also send me a DM on social media if you want a personal signed copy. You can send me a DM, and we can make that happen. All my social media handles are JLukeYDC, JLukeYDC. So you can reach out to me directly on social media to get a personal signed copy, Amazon or PurposeBeyondThePlaybook.com. But get one, get a few for your team, for your organization. I promise you'll be positively impacted for the better.
Absolutely. I can personally vouch for the book that you do need to get your hands on this from Jamal, and make sure that, number one, you are reading it, but also be a friend and tell a friend. This is one of those books that you want to buy for yourself, and also buy another copy to go ahead and pay it forward. Everything that Jamal just said about his social media, about the websites and ways to order the book will be linked in the show description, as well as on the website tsilverbulletin.com in the article that we pair with all of our episodes. Guys, we appreciate you listening for today's show. Jamal, thank you so much for coming on and joining us, and congratulations on your first book, Purpose Beyond the Playbook. Guys, make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel, following along wherever you get your podcast. Visit our website, tsilverbulletin.com. Make sure you're following the social outlets at tsilverbulletin. Guys, again, we appreciate you listening to today's show. Jamal, thank you so much again, and we will see you next time. God bless.